In spite of all, I am human and have done things that require forgiveness from others. I have transgressed against my fellows in moments of weakness and madness. I hope I can make it. George Jackson.
In the fall of 1970, George Jackson skyrocketed to international fame with the publication of his book, Soledad Brother, The Prison Letters of George Jackson. By the next year, he was dead.
George Jackson served a life sentence, which turned out to be a death sentence, for a $70 robbery.
The story of George Jackson is a story of the dark side of America. In August of 1971, when Jackson was a 29-year-old inmate at California's San Quentin prison, he became the central figure in the prison's bloodiest day. Jackson obtained a gun, and in less than 30 minutes, a murderous rampage turned the adjustment center into a slaughterhouse. 6 men, including Jackson, were killed.
It was unprecedented. It had never, ever happened before. It's never happened again.
During his prison life, George Jackson was a polarizing figure, hated as much as he was loved.
He was a threat in the prison system. He was one that just didn't seem to be very afraid.
He was defiant, he was proud, he was a revolutionary.
George Jackson was a thug. My guess is that he stole lunch money from his grade school associates.
He educated himself and emerged as the most powerful intellectual within the prison system.
He was a punk convict until he was catapulted into the spotlight. Once in the limelight, I think he rose above punk convict, but I think he never rose above opportunist.
In the end, when George Jackson's cause had been lost and the cult of hero worship contaminated his heart and soul, Jackson sought comfort in a few loyal friends, Marx, Lenin, and Ho Chi Minh, the Vietnamese revolutionary who predicted, when the prison gates fly open, the dragons will emerge. On a hot August day, with gun in hand, Jackson would tell the world just that.
I'm hopeful, and I will try with the best I can with everything I've got to end this battle and to return our sons to their desires.
We realize that we're shedding blood now, we're being killed.
The ascendancy of George Jackson came at a time when America's soul and its people were coming apart.
That this is revolution.
We will not be fooled.
The turbulent decades of the 1960s and 70s merged as one. The country's democratic institutions were severely challenged. Some advocated revolution.
I'm going to start right now to inform white people of what they don't know.
The black people in this country have been the victims of violence at the hands of the white man for 400 years.
I think it's un-American.
We cannot survive if we go fight some yellow man in Vietnam who ain't never called us nigger.
You're nothing but a bull, child-ass mother who doesn't give a when somebody is dying.
People had marched, people had gone to jail, people were very frustrated and very angry.
The unpopular war in Vietnam had become the longest and most divisive in American history. The bitter struggle for civil rights confirmed the failed promise of equality for all.
We'd been consigned to the ghetto for years and years and years. We'd not been allowed to break out of the ghetto.
Riots turned American cities into burning embers. The political assassinations of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and Robert Kennedy deepened the country's paranoia.
We were being put in a position of having to feel that our lives were under the gun.
Huey P. Newton and the Black Panther Party wanted justice beyond the streets of Oakland.
There were, I suppose, those who felt that all one needed to do was to take up the gun, and that would be the path toward freedom.
The prisons of California had become a target for revolutionary change as well. The New Left viewed the growing convict population as symptomatic of the country's deeper social ills.
We've got the militant blacks, the militant Nazis, the militant Chicanos. They're all here under one roof, and we are sitting on this lid like a tea kettle waiting for the steam to either come up or the lid to blow off.
Inmates were championed as political prisoners, vanguards of the coming revolution, victims of their fascist capitalist oppressors.
As long as there is any political prisoner in this country, as long as anyone is being discriminated against, none of us are free.
When George Jackson emerged as the new god and leader of the left, those on the right saw him as the most powerful threat in the prison system.
I think racism is a control device, control mechanism, create an atmosphere whereby they can control the inmates. And black is just a continuation of the same thing we've been going through on the street.
George Jackson was born in Chicago in 1941, one of 5 children in a poor working-class family. His mother, Georgia, was afraid of what the streets could do to him.
She wouldn't let him go out and play. She kept him up on the roof. You know, she wouldn't let him go out because she didn't want him to get in trouble.
I used to tell them that they were black, and in order to achieve, they'd have to be twice as good as white. I said, if you're twice as good as a white in school, then maybe you'll make something. Yes, that's what I used to tell them. It was the truth. So why hide it from them?
As a young boy at Catholic school, Jackson experienced racism. The playground was for white kids only. Growing up in the projects, he became involved in petty crime, fighting, stealing.
At age 15, his parents moved to LA and they settled in the Watts district, where he began to be involved in a little bit more serious crimes, stealing a motorbike, breaking and entering. In 1958, he was convicted of a store burglary and sent to CYA, California Youth Authority camp, for several months. He escaped, fled back to Chicago, was involved in a knifing, came back to California in chains.
After spending time locked up in the California Youth Authority, Jackson graduated to state prison when he pled guilty to the robbery of a Bakersfield gas station. It was 1961. Jackson was 19 years old, and he received the indeterminate sentence of 1 year to life.
Well, I was incarcerated under a 1 to life. A term they called for 1 to life, where I could have done 1 year and been released. I've done 10. That's more time than anybody in this state has ever done on a 1 to life.
According to fellow inmate James Carr, when the two became leaders of a gang known as the Wolf Pack, much of their time was spent in the usual convict hustles: gambling, booze, sex, blackmail.
He knew how to play the game. He was a tough guy. He studied martial arts. He was, he was strong, very muscular, very smart, very cunning guy.
Good behavior dictated Jackson's chance for parole. It became non-existent. Prison records indicate that he received over 40 disciplinary actions. Jackson spent 7 years in solitary.
He was a big guy. He was a tough guy. He was a predator when he was in the general population. He was a predator of other inmates. He just abused people.
He became a professional prisoner, a real dyed-in-the-wool convict.
And then he started reading revolutionary theory. Then he started reading Marx and Lenin and Mao. And he wrote, I read Marx and Lenin and Mao, and they redeemed me. All of a sudden, he had a context for his anger. He realized, you know, why he was there, why people of his race, of his working class background, why they were in prison in disproportionate numbers. And that was the appeal of George Jackson. He represented in the highest way the injustice of the system and the cruelty and the institutionalized racism of the system.